I stand in my kitchen at 11:47 at night, holding a coffee mug I haven't touched in years. The ceramic is pale blue with a hairline crack running down one side, a flaw that somehow makes it more precious rather than less. My fingers trace the chip on the rim where the glaze has worn smooth, and I wonder why I kept this particular cup when I threw out so many others. The house breathes around me in that particular way old houses do after midnight. The refrigerator hums its steady mechanical lullaby. Somewhere upstairs, one of my daughters shifts in her sleep, and the floorboards creak in response. Elaine's breathing carries down the hallway from our bedroom, deep and even, the rhythm of someone who has learned to sleep peacefully beside me after 20 years of marriage. But I cannot sleep. Not tonight. Earlier today, while searching through the kitchen drawer for batteries, I found something I had forgotten I still owned. A piece of paper, folded small and yellowed at the edges, tucked behind old takeout menus and expired coupons. When I unfolded it, the creases threatened to split completely. It was a bus schedule from the summer of 1999, the kind they used to print on cheap paper at the local transit office, with times listed in small black type that has faded to gray. I should have thrown it away immediately. There was no logical reason to keep a bus schedule from 25 years ago. The routes had changed. The company had been bought out twice since then. Even the bus stops had been moved or eliminated entirely. But instead, I smoothed it flat against the kitchen counter and stared at the evening schedule, my eyes finding the last departure time, 11:15 p.m. That was the bus August Hale said he had missed. I set the coffee mug down now and reached for the schedule again, though I have already memorized every detail. Route 7 to Milbrook, 11:15 p.m., final departure. No weekend service. The paper feels fragile between my fingers, like it might disintegrate if I handle it too roughly. Like the memory itself. August. I have not allowed myself to think his name in months, maybe longer. But tonight it rises in my mind like something surfacing from deep water, bringing with it the scent of late summer rain and the particular quality of light that filters through old street lamps. I was 22 that August. 22 and living alone in my father's house, the one I inherited when he died the previous spring. The mortgage was paid off, but everything else felt impossibly expensive. The weight of adulthood. The responsibility of maintaining a life that had been handed to me rather than chosen. I was working at the hardware store during the day and taking night classes in education, thinking vaguely that I might become a teacher someday. My future felt both predetermined and completely uncertain. The summer arts program was something I had signed up for on impulse, drawn by a flyer promising creative expression and community engagement. I told myself it would look good on college applications, though I was already too old for that kind of calculation. Really, I think I was just lonely. August was different from the other participants. Older than most of us, maybe 24 or 25, with an easy confidence that made him seem like he belonged wherever he happened to be standing. He had dark hair that was always slightly messy, as if he had just run his fingers through it, and he wore paint-stained jeans that somehow looked intentional rather than careless. We were assigned to work together on a mural project for the community center. Nothing elaborate, just something bright and welcoming for the children's reading room. August approached it like he was designing a cathedral. He would stand back from the wall for long minutes, studying the way light fell across the surface at different times of day. He sketched dozens of preliminary drawings, explaining his thinking in a voice that was patient and serious. I found myself looking forward to those afternoons in a way that surprised me. Not just for the work itself, though I discovered I enjoyed the meditative process of mixing colors and filling in careful shapes, but for the conversations we had while we painted. August talked about architecture, about the way spaces could make people feel safe or inspired or completely unsettled. He had opinions about everything from urban planning to the emotional resonance of certain color combinations. He listened when I spoke, really listened, like my thoughts were worth the attention. I should have recognized what was happening to me. The way my pulse quickened when I heard his laugh from across the room. The way I found excuses to stay late at the arts center, hoping he might stay late too. The way I started choosing my clothes more carefully in the morning, wondering if he would notice. But I was 22 and had spent my entire life in a town where certain possibilities were simply not discussed. I had dated girls in high school, even had a girlfriend senior year who I took to prom and kissed goodnight on her parents' front porch. I assumed that was the shape my life would take. Marriage, children, a house with a white picket fence, and a dog who would sleep by the fireplace. The American dream, handed down like a family recipe. The night it happened was the last Friday of the program. We had finished the mural earlier that week, and there was a small celebration planned for the participants and their families. I remember feeling melancholy as I walked around the arts center, looking at all the projects we had completed. In a few days, everyone would scatter back to their regular lives. August would return to whatever city he had come from. I would go back to the hardware store and my night classes and the quiet routine of living alone in my father's house. The celebration ended around 9:30. I helped stack chairs and sweep up, the kind of mindless cleanup that gives you time to think too much. Most people had already left, but August was still there, washing paintbrushes in the utility sink with the careful attention he brought to everything. I approached him slowly, not sure what I wanted to say. Something about how much I had enjoyed working with him, maybe. Something about staying in touch, though I had no idea how that might work. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. His hands were stained with paint that no amount of soap would completely remove. Blue and yellow under his fingernails, a smear of red on his wrist that he had missed. He said he needed to catch the bus back to his hotel. It was nearly 10:30 by then, and the last bus was scheduled for 11:15. Plenty of time, I thought. But when we walked outside together, the bus stop was empty except for a handwritten sign taped to the post. Out of service due to mechanical issues. August stared at the sign for a long moment, then laughed softly, not with amusement, but with the resigned humor of someone whose travel plans had just fallen apart. He said he would have to call a taxi, though he wasn't sure any would be running that late on a Friday night in our small town. I should have offered to drive him to his hotel. It would have been the normal, neighborly thing to do. Instead, I heard myself saying something else entirely. I told him he could stay at my place if he wanted, just for the night. I had a spare bedroom, and it would save him the taxi fare. He looked at me for what felt like a very long time. The streetlight above us flickered intermittently, casting his face in alternating shadow and pale yellow light. I could hear the distant sound of traffic from the main road, the occasional car passing with its headlights sweeping across the empty parking lot. He said that would be very kind of me. We walked the 6 blocks to my father's house mostly in silence. I pointed out landmarks along the way, the diner where I sometimes ate breakfast on weekends, the elementary school where I had learned to read. Small talk that felt both necessary and completely inadequate for what was happening between us. My house was dark when we arrived, just as I had left it. I turned on the porch light and fumbled with my keys, suddenly self-conscious about bringing someone home. The house was clean but sparse, furnished with my father's old furniture and my own uncertain attempts at making it feel like home rather than a museum. I showed August to the spare bedroom, gave him a clean towel and an extra toothbrush I found in the bathroom cabinet. I told him he could help himself to anything in the kitchen if he got hungry. Normal host behavior, polite and proper. But neither of us moved toward our respective bedrooms. Instead, we sat in my living room and talked until nearly 3 in the morning. About art and ambition and the particular loneliness of being young in a small town. About our families and our fears, and the strange sensation of time moving both too fast and too slow. August told me about the city where he lived, the graduate program he was finishing, the uncertain future that waited for him after that. I told him things I had never said out loud to anyone. About feeling trapped by other people's expectations. About the weight of living in my father's house, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, trying to figure out how to be an adult when I still felt like I was pretending most of the time. The conversation felt like surgery performed without anesthesia, necessary and painful, and somehow healing all at once. When we finally went to bed, I lay awake listening to the sounds of another person in my house. The unfamiliar creaking of floorboards under different footsteps, the running water from the bathroom, the soft closing of a door. I think I knew, even then, that something irreversible had begun. Now, 25 years later, I fold the bus schedule carefully and slide it into an envelope I have addressed, but not sealed. The ink is fresh, written in my careful handwriting just an hour ago. August Hale, followed by an address I found through careful internet searching, the kind of investigation that leaves traces in browser history I will have to remember to delete. I do not seal the envelope because I am not sure I am brave enough to send it, but I am not ready to throw it away either. Outside, the town sleeps as peacefully as it did that night in 1999. The same streetlights cast the same yellow pools of light. The same bus stop stands empty, though the route was discontinued years ago and the bench removed for safety reasons. I am 47 now, married with 2 teenage daughters who are both smarter and braver than I was at their age. I have built a life that looks exactly like what I was supposed to want. Stable employment as an assistant principal at the local high school. A comfortable house with good bones and a yard that Elaine tends with the devotion of someone who finds peace in growing things. Hannah is a junior now, already making plans for college applications. Miriam plays violin in the school orchestra and has inherited her mother's gift for making friends easily. From the outside, my life appears complete. Successful, even. But tonight, holding this envelope, I feel the weight of everything I have spent decades not saying. Not even to myself. I place the envelope on the kitchen table, next to the chipped coffee mug, and turn off the lights. Tomorrow I will have to decide whether 25 years of silence is long enough, or whether some secrets are meant to be kept forever. For now, I climb the stairs to the bedroom I share with my wife, moving carefully to avoid the step that creaks. Elaine does not stir when I slip into bed beside her. Her breathing remains steady and peaceful, the sound of someone who trusts that morning will arrive as expected, bringing with it the familiar routines that make a life feel manageable. I close my eyes and try not to think about August Hale standing under that flickering streetlight, saying he had missed the last bus home. Try not to remember the exact way he looked at me when I offered him a place to stay, like he was seeing something in me that I had not yet learned to see in myself. But some memories, once awakened, refuse to be dismissed. And as I lie in the darkness, listening to my wife breathe beside me, I can feel that night in 1999 rising to the surface like something that has been underwater for far too long, finally ready to break into the light. The morning arrives with the predictable rhythm of a life I have carefully constructed over 2 decades. Elaine's alarm sounds at 6:30, followed by the familiar shuffle of her feet across the hardwood floor to the bathroom. The coffee maker gurgles to life on its timer. Hannah's music bleeds through her bedroom wall, some band I pretend to understand when she explains their artistic merit. Miriam practices scales on her violin, the same exercises she has been perfecting for months. I shower and dress in the clothes I laid out the night before. Gray slacks, white button-down shirt, navy tie with thin diagonal stripes. The uniform of a man who works in education, who attends school board meetings and parent conferences, who represents stability and respectability in a community that values both above almost everything else. At breakfast, Elaine pours my coffee into the same mug I use every morning. Not the chipped blue one from last night, which remains exactly where I left it on the counter. This one is simple white ceramic with the school district logo, a gift from the Faculty Association 3 years ago. I drink from it while reading the local paper, though I absorb almost nothing of what I am supposed to be reading. Elaine moves through the kitchen with the efficient grace of someone who has perfected the choreography of family mornings. She packs lunches for the girls, reminds Hannah about her chemistry test, asks Miriam if she remembered to put her violin music in her backpack. She touches my shoulder as she passes behind my chair, a brief contact that carries 20 years of shared mornings just like this one. I want to tell her about the envelope on the kitchen table. I want to explain why I could not sleep. Why I stood in our kitchen holding a coffee mug like it contained answers to questions I have never learned how to ask. But she is already moving toward the next task, and I am already practicing the silence that has become my most reliable skill. The drive to work takes 12 minutes through streets I could navigate blindfolded. Past the Methodist church where we were married. Past the pharmacy where I pick up prescriptions for my slowly aging body. Past the park where I taught both my daughters to ride bicycles on summer evenings that felt endless and precious. This is Milbrook, Illinois. Population 8,437, according to the sign at the town limits. The kind of place where the high school football team draws bigger crowds than the movie theater, where the annual corn festival is front-page news in the local paper, where 3 generations of the same family often work at the same factory or farm or business. It is a good place to raise children. Safe streets, excellent schools, neighbors who still bring casseroles when someone is sick or grieving. The cost of living is reasonable. The pace of life allows for family dinners and little league games and the luxury of boredom on Sunday afternoons. I chose this life deliberately. After that summer in 1999, after August disappeared back to whatever city had produced someone so comfortable with ambition and uncertainty, I made a series of careful decisions designed to create exactly the existence I now inhabit. I finished my education degree. I took a teaching position at the elementary school, then worked my way up to assistant principal at the high school. I married Elaine Peterson, whom I met at a church social when I was 26 and she was 24. She was pretty and kind and shared my vision of a quiet, stable future. We dated for 2 years before I proposed, married the following spring in a ceremony that satisfied both our families' expectations. Hannah was born 2 years later, Miriam 3 years after that. We bought this house when Hannah was 4, a 2-story colonial with good bones and a yard big enough for swing sets and birthday parties. I coached Hannah's soccer team for 3 seasons. I helped Miriam with her math homework every night until she surpassed my abilities in 7th grade. From any reasonable perspective, I have succeeded at life. I provide for my family. I contribute to my community. I am respected at work and trusted by my neighbors. My daughters are healthy and bright and will have opportunities one could barely imagine when I was their age. But late at night, when the house settles into silence and I lie awake listening to Elaine breathe beside me, I sometimes feel like I am suffocating under the weight of my own contentment. I park in my assigned space at the high school and walk through corridors that smell like industrial disinfectant and teenage anxiety. Students nod respectfully as I pass, calling me Mr. Ross in voices that remind me how much authority I have accumulated simply by surviving to middle age. My office overlooks the parking lot where buses arrive each morning, disgorging streams of young people who still believe their lives might take any shape imaginable. I watch them through my window and remember being their age, when the future felt both infinite and terrifying. When I thought I had time to figure out who I was supposed to become. In my desk drawer, hidden beneath administrative reports and disciplinary forms, I keep a small cardboard box. Inside are photographs from various stages of my adult life. Wedding pictures, baby photos of the girls, family vacations to places we thought we should visit. And buried beneath all of those socially acceptable memories, a single photograph from the summer arts program. It shows August and me standing in front of our completed mural, both of us paint-splattered and grinning at whoever was holding the camera. August's arm rests casually across my shoulders, and I am leaning into the contact like it is the most natural thing in the world. We look happy. We look like we belong together. I have not looked at this photograph in months, maybe longer. But today I find myself opening the drawer, moving aside the other pictures, holding this one up to the light filtering through my office window. 25 years later, I can still remember exactly how it felt to have August's arm around my shoulders. The weight of it, the warmth, the way it made me feel both protected and exposed at the same time. I can remember thinking, in that moment, that this was what contentment actually felt like. Not the careful satisfaction of a life lived according to plan, but the wild joy of being exactly where you belonged with exactly the person who understood you. I slide the photograph back into the box and close the drawer. In 3 hours, I have a meeting with parents whose son has been caught cheating on exams. After that, a conference call with the district office about next year's budget. Then home to dinner with my family, homework supervision, the evening news, the familiar rhythm of a Tuesday night in a life that requires nothing more from me than showing up and performing the role I have spent decades perfecting. But first, I open my laptop and type August Hale's name into the search bar, knowing I should not. Unable to stop myself from wanting to know what became of the boy who taught me the difference between existing and living, even if I was too afraid to learn the lesson when it mattered most. The email arrives on a Thursday afternoon while I am reviewing suspension reports, the kind of administrative task that requires just enough attention to prevent deeper thinking. My computer chimes softly, and I glance at the screen expecting another message about budget cuts or curriculum changes or one of the 100 small crises that define my professional life. Instead, I see an address I do not recognize and a subject line that makes my chest tighten. Milbrook Summer Arts Program, 25th Anniversary Reunion. I stare at the screen for a long moment before opening the message. The sender identifies herself as Margaret Shun, current director of the Milbrook Historical Society. She writes in the enthusiastic tone of someone organizing community events. explaining that they are hosting a celebration to mark the 25th anniversary of the summer arts program that operated from 1997 to 2002. The program was discontinued due to funding cuts, she explains, but many former participants have expressed interest in reconnecting. They have secured the original Arts Center for a Saturday evening in September. Light refreshments will be provided. Former artwork and photographs will be displayed. Everyone who participated is invited to attend and share memories of that special time in the community's cultural history. At the bottom of the email is a list of former participants who have already responded with their intention to attend. I scroll through names I barely remember, people who were part of that summer but peripheral to my actual experience. Sarah Martinez, who painted watercolor landscapes. David Kim, who worked in ceramics. Jennifer Walsh, who organized the final exhibition. And then, near the bottom of the list, August Hale. I close the laptop immediately, as if the name might disappear if I am not looking at it. But closing my eyes only makes it more vivid. August Hale, typed in the same plain font as everyone else, as if his name does not carry the weight of everything I have spent 25 years not thinking about. The rest of the afternoon passes in a haze. I attend my scheduled meetings and respond to parent emails and review disciplinary reports, but I am operating on autopilot, performing the familiar motions while my mind cycles through the implications of that simple list. August is alive. August remembers the program enough to respond to an invitation. August plans to return to Milbrook for the first time since that summer when we painted a mural together and talked until 3 in the morning and changed the entire trajectory of my understanding of what was possible. I drive home through streets that suddenly feel foreign, as if seeing them through the eyes of someone who might soon return. Will August remember the corner where we stopped to buy ice cream after a long day of painting? Will he recognize the house where I lived then, where he spent one night that I have never allowed myself to fully remember? At dinner, Elaine asks about my day in the casual way of spouses who have learned to fill silence with gentle questions. I tell her it was fine, routine, nothing worth discussing. Hannah talks about her upcoming homecoming dance and the drama surrounding who is dating whom. Miriam practices violin afterward, the same pieces she has been working on for weeks, each repetition slightly more polished than the last. I sit in my chair and listen to my daughter make music while my wife grades papers at the kitchen table, and I feel like I am watching someone else's life through a window. This peaceful domestic scene that I have worked so hard to create suddenly feels as fragile as tissue paper. That night, I lie awake until nearly 2 in the morning, then give up on sleep and return to my laptop. I type August's name into various search engines, telling myself I am just curious about what became of him, trying to ignore the fact that my hands are trembling slightly as I click through the results. I find a faculty profile at a school of architecture in Vermont. The photograph is small and professional, but unmistakably him. Older, of course, with silver threading through hair that is still unruly in exactly the way I remember. He teaches design studios and community planning courses. His research interests include sustainable urban development and participatory design processes. There is a brief biography that mentions his undergraduate work in fine arts, his graduate degree in architecture, his involvement in various community projects. No mention of a spouse or family. No personal details beyond his professional accomplishments. I find a newspaper article from 2 years ago about a community center he helped design in Burlington. The photograph shows him standing beside a group of local residents, all of them smiling in front of a building that somehow manages to look both modern and timeless. He is quoted talking about the importance of creating spaces where people can gather and feel a sense of belonging. I close the laptop and return to bed, but sleep feels impossible. Instead, I stare at the ceiling and try to imagine what it would be like to see August again after 25 years. What we would say to each other. Whether he would recognize the man I have become, buried as he is under layers of respectability and careful choices. The next morning, I sit at the kitchen table with my coffee and the email printed out on paper, studying the list of names as if it might reveal some hidden meaning. Elaine notices the paper and asks what it is. I tell her about the reunion, explaining it in the most casual terms possible. Just a gathering of people who participated in an old community program. Nothing particularly interesting. She asks if I am thinking of going. I give her what I hope is a non-committal shrug and say I am probably too busy. But even as I speak the words, I know they are a lie. I am already planning to attend, already imagining what I will wear and what I will say and how I will explain 25 years of silence to someone who once knew me better than I knew myself. That evening, I write my response to Margaret Chen. I will be delighted to attend the reunion. I look forward to reconnecting with fellow participants and celebrating the program's lasting impact on the community. I send the email before I can change my mind and immediately feel like I have just stepped off a cliff with no idea where or how I will land. The reunion is 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to prepare for a conversation I have been avoiding for 25 years. 6 weeks to figure out how to face the man who taught me the difference between living and merely existing, knowing that I chose existence over the risk of actually being alive. The 6 weeks pass like a fever dream, each day bringing me closer to a moment I simultaneously crave and dread. I catch myself rehearsing conversations that will never happen, practicing casual greetings in my car during lunch breaks, imagining scenarios where I am sophisticated and unaffected by the presence of someone who once meant everything to me. The morning of the reunion, I stand in front of my bedroom mirror for 20 minutes, changing clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that Elaine bought me last Christmas. Not too formal, not too casual. The kind of outfit that suggests I am comfortable with myself, though comfort feels like a foreign concept as I adjust my collar for the 4th time. Elaine asks if I want her to come with me. She says it might be fun to meet people from my past, to see the artwork we created all those years ago. I tell her it will probably be boring, just a bunch of middle-aged people trying to recapture something that was never as meaningful as they remember it being. She smiles and says she understands, but I catch something in her expression that suggests she knows I am not telling her everything. The arts center looks smaller than I remembered, but otherwise unchanged. The same brick facade, the same large windows facing the street, the same hand-painted sign that someone clearly touched up for the occasion. I sit in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes, watching other former participants arrive, recognizing some faces despite the passage of 25 years. When I finally force myself to go inside, the main gallery is filled with displays of artwork and photographs from the program's 5-year run. Someone has organized everything chronologically, and I find myself drawn to the section from 1999 despite every instinct telling me to look anywhere else. There is our mural, photographed from multiple angles, looking exactly as we left it all those years ago. The colors are still bright, the design still cohesive despite being created by 2 people who barely knew each other. In one photograph, I can see both our signatures in the bottom right corner, written in paint that has probably faded by now but was bold and confident then. I am studying these images when I hear a voice I have not forgotten, despite 25 years of trying. He says my name like a question, like he cannot quite believe I am standing here. I turn around and see August Hale as he is now, not as I have been remembering him. The boy I knew has become a man, with lines around his eyes and silver in his hair, and a way of carrying himself that suggests he has made peace with who he is. We look at each other for a moment that stretches uncomfortably long. I want to say something profound, something that acknowledges the weight of this meeting without revealing how much I have thought about it. Instead, I manage only his name, spoken like I am still learning how to pronounce it. He smiles, and it is the same smile I remember, warm and slightly crooked and completely genuine. He says it is good to see me, that he was not sure I would come. I tell him I almost did not, which is more honesty than I intended to offer. We make small talk for the first few minutes, the kind of surface-level conversation people have at high school reunions. I tell him about my work at the school, about Hannah and Miriam, about living in the same town where we met. He tells me about teaching, about his work designing community spaces, about living in Vermont where the winters are long but the summers make up for everything. Neither of us mentions spouses or partners, though I notice he is not wearing a wedding ring. Neither of us talks about that night 25 years ago when he missed the last bus and stayed at my house, and we sat in my living room until dawn talking about everything except what was actually happening between us. Other people approach us throughout the evening, former participants eager to reminisce about shared experiences I barely remember. August is gracious with everyone, asking thoughtful questions about their lives and careers, showing genuine interest in how the program influenced their subsequent choices. I watch him work the room with an ease I have never possessed, and I feel both proud to have known him and acutely aware of how different our paths have been. As the evening winds down, as people begin to gather their coats and exchange phone numbers they will probably never use, August approaches me near the display of our mural. The gallery has mostly emptied, leaving just a few stragglers and the Historical Society volunteers cleaning up. He asks if I remember working on this project. I tell him of course I remember, though I do not mention that I have thought about it more often than I should have. He says he still has some of the preliminary sketches we made, stored in a portfolio he has carried through multiple moves and career changes. Then he pauses, and his voice becomes quieter, more careful. He asks if I ever think about that night. Not the mural or the program or the summer in general. That specific night when he stayed at my house. The question hits me like cold water. For 25 years, I have convinced myself that I was the only one who remembered, the only one who attached significance to what happened between us. The possibility that August has also carried this memory, has also wondered what might have been different if we had been braver or more honest, or simply younger in a different decade, never occurred to me. I want to tell him that I think about that night constantly, that I have built an entire life trying to forget the way it felt to sit beside him on my couch and talk about dreams and fears and possibilities I had never articulated to anyone. That I have measured every subsequent relationship against the impossible standard of one perfect conversation with someone who understood me completely. Instead, I mumble something non-committal about how long ago it was, how different we both were then. But he keeps looking at me with those same eyes that saw through my carefully constructed defenses when I was 22. And I know he is not fooled by my deflection. People are leaving now, calling goodbyes across the gallery, making plans to stay in touch that most of them will not keep. August needs to drive back to his hotel. I need to go home to my family, to the life I have spent decades building and protecting. But as he prepares to leave, he turns back to me one more time. His voice is quiet, almost hesitant, when he asks if I might want to get coffee sometime before he drives back to Vermont, just to catch up properly, without all the noise and distractions of a reunion. I hear myself saying yes before my rational mind can intervene. We exchange phone numbers, and he says he will call me tomorrow to arrange something. Then he is gone, leaving me standing alone in the gallery with the ghosts of our younger selves painted on the wall behind me. August calls the next morning while I am sitting on my back porch, drinking coffee and watching the field behind our house catch the early light. His voice sounds different over the phone, more tentative than it was in person, as if the distance has made him uncertain about what we agreed to the night before. He suggests we meet at the old diner on Main Street, the one that still serves the same pie from 1985, as I had described it to him years ago. I tell him that sounds fine, though fine is not remotely accurate for how I feel about the prospect of sitting across a table from him without the buffer of other people and shared nostalgia. I arrive first and choose a booth in the back corner, away from the windows where anyone walking by might see us together. Not because there is anything inherently wrong with two old friends having coffee, but because I am not sure I can control my expression well enough to maintain the fiction that this is a casual meeting. When August walks in, he looks around the diner with the careful attention I remember from our mural project, taking in details like the cracked vinyl on the counter stools and the hand-lettered menu board that has not changed in decades. He slides into the booth across from me, and suddenly the table feels both too wide and not nearly wide enough. We order coffee and make small talk about the reunion, about people we recognized and others who had changed beyond recognition. The waitress brings our drinks and retreats to give us privacy, and the conversation settles into something that feels almost normal until August sets down his cup and looks directly at me. He says he needs to tell me something he should have said 25 years ago, that night when he stayed at my house. When we talked until dawn about everything except what was actually happening between us, he knew. He knew that what he was feeling was not friendship or gratitude or simple human connection. He knew that he was falling in love with me, had probably been falling in love with me for weeks without admitting it to himself. The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down my own coffee cup carefully, afraid my hands might be shaking enough for him to notice. I want to tell him that I knew too, that I felt the same overwhelming certainty that something fundamental was shifting between us. Instead, I ask him why he never said anything. He laughs, but there is no humor in it. He says he was 24 years old in 1999, in a small town where being different was not exactly celebrated. He had no idea how I felt. No way to know if speaking honestly would destroy whatever fragile connection we had built. So he chose silence, thinking it was safer for both of us. Then he tells me something that changes everything I thought I understood about that summer. He says he did not actually miss the bus that night. The mechanical problems were real, but there was an earlier bus he could have caught. He chose to stay because he wanted more time with me, because he was hoping something might happen between us that neither of us was brave enough to initiate. I stare at him across the table, trying to process this information. For 25 years, I have told myself that what happened between us was accidental, circumstantial, the result of missed transportation and ordinary kindness. Learning that it was deliberate, that August chose to create the opportunity for intimacy, makes me feel both grateful and devastated. I tell him that I built an entire life trying to forget that night, that I married a good woman and had beautiful children and created exactly the kind of existence that was expected of me, that I buried what I felt for him so deeply I sometimes convinced myself it never happened at all. But I also tell him the truth I have never spoken aloud, that no relationship since has felt as honest as those few hours we spent talking in my living room, that I have measured every conversation, every moment of connection, against the impossible standard he set simply by seeing me clearly and accepting what he saw. August reaches across the table and touches my hand, just briefly, but the contact sends electricity through my entire body. He says he never stopped thinking about me, never stopped wondering what might have happened if we had been braver. He tells me about relationships that felt incomplete, about always sensing that something essential was missing, about carrying the memory of one perfect night like a secret he could never fully share with anyone else. We talk for 2 hours, the conversation moving between confession and regret, between what was and what might have been. Other customers come and go around us, but we remain in our corner booth, finally saying everything we should have said when we were young enough for the truth to matter differently. When we finally leave the diner, the afternoon sun feels too bright, too harsh for the tender thing that has grown between us over coffee and honest words. We stand beside our cars in the parking lot, and I can feel the weight of 25 years of silence dissolving into something more dangerous. August asks if he can see me again before he drives back to Vermont. Not for coffee or conversation or the pretense of casual friendship. He wants to know if there is still something real between us, something worth exploring despite everything that has changed, everything we have both lost and found in the years since we knew each other. I want to tell him yes immediately, without thinking about consequences or complications or the family waiting for me at home. But I am 47 years old now, not 22, and the choices I make will affect more people than just myself. Instead, I tell him I need time to think. He nods like he understands, like he expected this answer. We exchange a look that carries everything we have said and everything we have not said, and then he gets in his car and drives away, leaving me standing alone in a parking lot, feeling like my entire carefully constructed world has just shifted on its axis. That night, I lie awake beside Elaine and try to imagine what it would mean to choose honesty over safety, truth over the comfortable lie my life has become. For the first time in 25 years, I allow myself to consider the possibility that it might not be too late to become the person I was always meant to be. I sit in my car in the driveway for nearly an hour that night, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. Through the living room window, I can see my family moving through their evening routines. Elaine helping Miriam with geometry homework at the kitchen table. Hannah on the couch with her laptop, probably texting friends about weekend plans. The warm light from our lamps creates a tableau of domestic contentment that I have spent 20 years perfecting. From the outside, it looks like everything I am supposed to want. Security, stability, the quiet satisfaction of a life lived according to plan. But sitting here in the darkness, I feel like I am suffocating under the weight of my own careful choices. When I finally go inside, Elaine asks how the coffee went. I tell her it was fine, just catching up with an old friend, nothing particularly interesting. She nods and returns to helping Miriam with equations that have definitive answers, problems with solutions that can be verified and trusted. I want to tell her about August's revelation, about learning that what I thought was chance was actually choice. I want to explain that for 25 years I have been carrying the memory of someone who saw me clearly and loved what he saw, even when I could not love it myself. But she is focused on helping our daughter understand mathematical relationships, and I cannot find words for the emotional algebra that has been consuming me since yesterday. The next 3 days pass in a haze of routine activities that feel increasingly surreal. I attend faculty meetings and grade papers, and help Hannah practice parallel parking in preparation for her driver's test. I have dinner with my family and watch television and perform all the gestures of a man living the life he chose. But underneath the surface, I am drowning. August calls on Wednesday evening while I am washing dishes after dinner. Elaine is upstairs helping Miriam practice violin, and Hannah is at soccer practice, so I answer without thinking about who might overhear. His voice is careful, respectful of the boundaries I have spent decades constructing. He says he understands if I have decided this is too complicated, too risky. He knows I have a family, responsibilities, a whole life that does not include space for the kind of honesty we shared over coffee. But he also says something that stops my heart completely. He tells me that he is leaving Vermont at the end of the semester, accepting a position at a university in California. This trip to Milbrook was partly about saying goodbye to the past, about making peace with roads not taken before starting over somewhere new. He will be driving through Illinois on his way west. If I want to see him again, to explore what might still exist between us, this could be our last opportunity. Not just for years, but possibly forever. I tell him I need more time to think, though we both know that time is the one thing we no longer have in abundance. He gives me the dates he will be passing through, the hotel where he plans to stay. He says he will understand whatever I decide, but he wanted me to know that the possibility exists if I am brave enough to reach for it. That night, I pull out the old photograph from my desk drawer and study it in the lamplight of my home office. 2 young men standing in front of a mural they created together, both of them smiling like they have discovered something precious. August's arm around my shoulders, my body leaning into his touch with unconscious trust. I try to remember what it felt like to be that version of myself. Uncertain about the future, yes, but also open to possibility in ways that middle age has taught me to forget. When did I become so afraid of wanting something that I stopped allowing myself to want anything at all? Friday morning, I call in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of going to the school, I drive to the lake where I sometimes go when I need to think. I sit on a bench overlooking water that reflects the gray October sky and try to imagine different versions of my future. In one version, I go home and continue living exactly as I have been. I never see August again, never speak about what happened between us, never acknowledge the part of myself that has been sleeping for 25 years. It is a safe choice, a responsible choice, a choice that protects everyone I love from the chaos of my belated self-discovery. In another version, I meet August at his hotel and tell him that I have been living half a life, that I am tired of being afraid of my own desires. I cannot promise him forever, cannot guarantee that I know how to untangle myself from 2 decades of careful construction. But I can offer him honesty, finally, and see where truth might lead us. The choice feels impossible until I realize it is not really a choice at all. I have been choosing fear for 25 years, choosing safety over authenticity, choosing the life I thought I should want over the life that might actually fulfill me. Sitting by the lake, watching ducks navigate water that looks calm on the surface but carries invisible currents underneath, I understand that I cannot continue drowning in my own caution. That evening, I write 2 letters. The first is to August, telling him I will meet him at his hotel on Sunday evening. Not because I know what will happen between us, but because I finally understand that not knowing is preferable to spending the rest of my life wondering. The second letter is to Elaine, though I do not seal it immediately. I write about living half a life, about discovering that the person I thought I was may not be the person I actually am. I do not tell her about August specifically, not yet, but I try to explain that I need to be honest about who I am before I can be honest about anything else. I place both letters on my desk and sit in the darkness, finally ready to stop running from the truth of what I want, what I have always wanted, what I was too afraid to reach for when it mattered most. In 48 hours, I will either find the courage to step into uncertainty, or I will spend the rest of my life knowing I chose safety over the possibility of becoming whole. Sunday arrives with the kind of crystalline clarity that autumn brings to Illinois, the air sharp and clean, the leaves just beginning their slow surrender to winter. I wake before dawn and sit in the kitchen with my coffee, watching the sky lighten gradually over the field behind our house. In a few hours, I will drive to August's hotel and step into a conversation that will change everything. But for now, there is only the quiet breathing of my sleeping family and the weight of decisions that can no longer be postponed. I leave the sealed letter to Elaine on the kitchen table before anyone else wakes up. Not hidden, but not prominently displayed either. She will find it when she comes down to make breakfast. Will read words I have never found the courage to speak aloud. I tell her I love her, that I have always loved her, but that I need to be honest about who I am before I can be honest about anything else. I ask for her patience while I figure out how to live authentically for the first time in my adult life. The drive to August's hotel takes 43 minutes through countryside that looks exactly as it did 25 years ago. The same farms, the same red barns weathered silver by decades of storms, the same two-lane roads that connect small towns to each other and to nothing at all. I have driven these roads thousands of times, but today they feel like a passage to somewhere entirely foreign. I find August sitting on a bench outside the hotel, smoking a cigarette and reading a book whose title I cannot see from my car. He looks up when he hears my footsteps on the gravel, and his expression carries the same mixture of hope and uncertainty that I feel lodged in my chest like a stone. We do not embrace, do not touch at all, but something passes between us that feels more intimate than contact. Recognition, perhaps. The acknowledgement that we are both here despite everything that should have kept us apart. He asks if I want to walk. There is a trail behind the hotel that follows a creek through woods that have not changed much since we were young. We walk slowly, our conversation tentative at first, circling around the enormity of what my presence here means. I tell him about the letter I left for Elaine, about finally understanding that I cannot continue living half a life. He listens without judgment, occasionally asking quiet questions that help me untangle thoughts I have never spoken aloud. He does not push for declarations or promises, does not ask for more than I am ready to give. As we follow the creek deeper into the woods, I find myself talking about fear, how it has shaped every major decision I have made since that night 25 years ago. How I chose safety over truth so consistently that I almost forgot truth was an option. August stops walking and turns to face me. We are standing on a wooden bridge over water that moves slowly between banks lined with trees whose leaves catch the afternoon light like scattered gold. He says something I will remember for the rest of my life. He tells me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. That choosing authenticity after decades of hiding is not a betrayal of the life I built, but a completion of it. That becoming whole does not mean destroying everything I have created, but finally allowing all parts of myself to exist in the same space. When he reaches for my hand, I do not pull away. His fingers are warm and slightly rough from years of architectural work, and holding them feels like coming home to a place I never knew I had been missing. We stand there on the bridge for a long time, not speaking, just breathing the same air and feeling the weight of 25 years of silence finally lifting. When we kiss, it is not with the desperate passion of people trying to reclaim lost time, but with the tenderness of two men who understand how precious and fragile this moment is. I do not know what will happen next. I cannot promise August a future together, cannot guarantee that I know how to navigate the chaos I am about to create in my carefully ordered life. But for the first time since I was 22 years old, I am not running from the truth of what I want. That evening, I drive home through the same countryside that brought me to him, but I am not the same person who made this journey 12 hours ago. The letter is gone from the kitchen table when I arrive, and Elaine is waiting in the living room with eyes that have been crying but hold no anger, only a sadness that cuts deeper than rage ever could. We talk until nearly midnight. She tells me she has suspected for years that I was carrying something I could not share with her. I tell her about August, about that night in 1999, about spending decades trying to bury a part of myself that refused to stay dead. She asks me what I need from her now. I tell her I need time to figure out who I am when I am not afraid, and space to discover what authenticity looks like at 47 years old. She nods and says she needs the same things, though for different reasons. 3 months later, I'm sitting on the same bench where I left my wedding ring, watching buses that no longer stop here pass by on their way to places I have never seen. The divorce papers are signed, the custody arrangements settled. Hannah and Miriam spend weekends with me in the small apartment I rent near the school, and we are learning how to love each other honestly for the first time. August and I write letters and talk on the phone and visit when we can. We are not rushing toward anything, not trying to recover lost time or recreate what we might have had if we had been braver when we were young. Instead, we are learning how to build something new from the foundation of who we actually are. The morning light stretches long across the empty street, and I am finally breathing freely.